Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5-Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Hey Rush Nation, welcome back. It is week 4 waiver wire. We're already over 20% of this regular fantasy season through, which is just mad. It's just mad how quick it's going. Before we know it, it's going to be winter. Before we know it, it's playoff football and the Super Bowl. It really does get crazy, and it really does go very, very, very quickly. So very keen to get through today's waiver wires. I've got an amazing guest tonight, not long after this show, so please stay tuned for that. Before we get started with the waiver wire, just need to remind you to please do check out Manscaped. Now, they really are the greatest ball trimmer of all time with GOAT technology. It is the global leader in below the waist grooming, and really the Tom Brady of ball trimmers, as I keep saying. And over 2 million men, including myself, trust Manscaped. Please do give it a try. They do have this amazing pro performance package, which you can use the code 5Yard, get 20% off. You can get the deodorant, you can get the body wash, you can get the foot deodorizer, which is really great. I definitely use that, especially if I'm going out in my trainers without socks, especially with lockdown. So please do go check out manscaped.co.uk or manscaped.com. Use the code 5Yard and get 20% off plus free shipping. So getting into the waiver wire action this week, and I mean, it was a great week of action. Let's go through and look at some peak players that you could be picking up, because especially if you started 0-3, 1-2, you really need to start taking some risks and getting some peak performance. And there's been a lot of injuries so far, so let's get you back on track. And we'll start with the quarterbacks. And Sam Darnold, no surprise here, will be my first waiver wire pickup of the week. He is 9% owned, so people haven't really bought into the Sam Darnold redemption tour, but he really is in top gear. In terms of last season, he only threw over 250 yards just once. Now he's removed from Adam Gase. He's gone over 300 yards in back-to-back games, over 250 the first game of the season. He has Dallas this week, not necessarily the best defensive matchup either, so he should be pushing to go for a third game in a row over 300 yards. But he's played very well. He's kept the ball well, not silly mistakes, no turnovers. So I really like Sam Darnold as a play this week. Another player I like is Taylor Heineke, 3.5% owned. He has Atlanta in week 4. Again, not a defense that's really shown up or done too much, although they were pretty good against the Giants. What I would say about Taylor Heineke is it's looking more and more like he's playing himself into this job on a permanent basis. And I know he's not everyone's got a cup of tea, but he has adapted really well as a starter. So I can understand you might want to own a Darnold or a Cousins over Heineke, but it's a really good matchup. And I haven't done my rankings for the week, but potentially I could see him getting quite close to that sort of QB1 top 12 conversation. So for both of these guys, I don't think you need to spend a lot of fab, probably 1-2%. Don't think you need to be spending more than 3% on any quarterback in a 1 QB league. Obviously, in a 2 QB league, these guys would have gone, and they would have gone for Heineke would have gone for big money, probably 20-30%. So not expecting these guys to be available in 2 QB leagues. If they are, then definitely spend the premium and make sure you get one of these guys on your roster if you're short a QB. In terms of maybe ones that might be free on your waiver wire that worth a look is Derek Carr. He's actually 50% owned, so he's also 50% unowned by that maths, and he is actually leading the league in passing this year, and he has been absolutely terrific. Has the Chargers next. Looks like that'll be a shootout game. So if you're desperate for QB, Derek Carr's there. Definitely lump on, because he looks a different caliber this season, that's for sure. Moving on to running backs, and this is a name I put in last week's show, and he's in this week's show, Juba Hubbard, 11.3% owned. He also has Dallas next week, and I felt that some people probably took me up on this. Most people might have ignored it, and now CMC's gone down. If you listened to me last week, or you listened to me in previous weeks saying that you should own these sort of top handcuffs, and you've got Hubbard on your roster, you've saved a significant amount of your fab budget. And we don't want to talk about injuries, and we don't want to talk about profiting from injuries, but it is part and parcel of the game. And now Chuba Hubbard will be the number one most added player off the waiver wire this week. He will go for significant fab. I would say, looking at Christian McCaffrey's injury, I think it's looking like he'll miss 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And I think as a result, it could be more. So you're looking at this similar uncertainty to what Mike Davis was last year. I would say, given the history, I think it's likely he could miss a month. And as a result of that, Chuba Hubbard, with that volume and the way that they run in that offense, I think he's worth 25% of fab for 4 games, because I think that's 4 games of elite production that could turn into more. And I think that is what you're chasing. And if you're 1-2, 0-3, I think you need to do it. I think you maybe even have to go a little bit more than that to spin it up. And I think you've got to do it. If you need to pay 30% up for Chuba Hubbard, and you're not, you need a running back and you have a low record, this is where you're going to start. It's going to obviously be very difficult to try and get replacements afterwards, but I think you've got to take it 1 week at a time and start turning it around. And Chuba Hubbard might be the quickest way to do that. Another back that is definitely going to pique some interest this week is Peyton Barber, 7.3% owned. He has the Chargers this week, and we can finally establish that Kenyon Drake is not. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. And as a result, it is time to just ignore Drake. And if you've got him on your rosters, you can drop him, and you can pick up Barber. And I mean, he is really only handcuffed to Josh Jacobs, but he did get over 20 attempts. He did run for over 100 yards on Sunday. And as a result, whilst Jacobs is out, he's going to be a vital part of this offense, especially as they're not the most pass happy, even though we've talked about the amount of yardage that's been thrown about there for Derek Carr, and he's leading the league. It's not off a crazy amount of attempts. And that's what's key, is you're looking at the ratios, the shares. They're balanced, very well balanced offense, this Raiders offense this year. So I think Peyton Barber's a shrewd ad. I don't think you break the bank on him, because I don't think he has the same upside as like a Chuba Hubbard has. So I think if you can get him for 10% of your fab or less, I think that's a good addition. But it could be that Josh Jacobs is back. Definitely check on the injury status of Josh Jacobs. We had this last year. It was one of those things. He's trending towards going. He potentially is going to start, and then he doesn't. And it goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's a bit like a roulette wheel. It's going to be very hard to predict. Josh Jacobs could be back on Sunday. He could be back in 6 weeks from now. It really is a bit of a lottery as to what happens. So keep an eye on Barber, keep an eye on Jacobs. But yeah, worth definitely some adage. And you've got a bit of time to make this decision, because you have until Wednesday at 8 a.m. if you're in the UK to make this decision. So just keep an eye on the reports. Look at the beat reporters that what they're saying about Jacobs. If it's not trending towards him likely to start this week, it's worth putting a fab bid on Peyton Barber, even if it is just for 1 week, and that premium handcuff, because that injury is still going to be there. Other players you can target: Zach Moss, 57.1% owned, 91 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. He has usurped Devin Singletary. I was always confident that was going to happen. I don't know what happened at the start of the season, why he was a healthy scratch, but that is something that's happened. And as a result, that's something that he has overcome, and fair play to him. JJ Taylor, 0.6% owned, and with James White going down with a hip injury, that could be a few weeks out. And if that's the case, then JJ Taylor is the next man up. It's not Ramondre Stevenson. He's been a healthy scratch over the last few games. And maybe this might be Ramondre Stevenson's chance of redemption. But the fact that he's been a healthy scratch the last few weeks says to me that he might get a chance and he might take it. But he's not the next guy up. It's JJ Taylor. They do have the Bucks next, so I wouldn't be spending a lot of fab. You probably get him for 1% of fab, which is just a sneaky ad, especially in those deep leagues. Moving on to wide receivers, Emmanuel Sanders, 23.2% owned. He has Houston in week 4. It was a massive game for Sanders, 5 catches off 6 targets for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. Beasley's the slot. Beasley's going to get more targets than Sanders, and really, he's the third read in this offense. And so take this with a pinch of salt. Very useful guy. He's going to have wide receiver 2 upside weeks. He's not going to put up the big numbers consistently like he did on Sunday, but he does need to be rostered. He needs to be owned more than 23.2%. I think for me, he's a sort of top 40, top 45 wide receiver this year, and he will produce better than some of the players you've got on your bench. So I like Emmanuel Sanders. I like he's the sort of guy that is like a glue guy. You can put in the flex, and he's going to put up a reasonable amount of points quite a lot of weeks, even if it's that low end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 numbers. It's still numbers. And a similar profile to that is AJ Green, 24.8% owned. He has the Rams in week 4, and he really is a thing. And I know I've said a lot of things about AJ Green over the years on this podcast, saying he's not a thing, he's finished. At the end of the day, he's moved to Arizona. It's a more electric offense. They've got a role for him. He's had consistently 6 targets in each of his 3 games so far. He's a red zone threat and he's a deep ball threat. And similar to Sanders, he's going to have weeks where he has that sort of wide receiver 2 upside like he did this week. But he is more of a wide receiver 3 flex option going forward. And these are the sorts of guys that help you win leagues. The AJ Greens, the Emmanuel Sanders, because they have those sort of boom and bust weeks. And if you have them in the roster at the right time, they'll take off and just give you a load of plentiful points. But they're useful guys to have on your roster. Both should be owned. Some fringe guys here you can think about. Nick Westbrook, he's actually 0.0% owned. And he was the guy who came in for AJ Brown. We don't know what AJ Brown's injury is. Looks like it could be a hamstring, looks like he could be out a few weeks. And if that's the case, Westbrook came in, he had 4 catches for 53 yards off 4 targets and a TD. Chester Rogers, who's 0.1% owned, he was sort of the initial person to come in. But he had 2 targets, 1 catch for 6 yards and a touchdown. I think for me, if I'm just looking on what I saw on Sunday, Westbrook seems to be the more immediate and better choice, especially given the chemistry he built quite early. But you can't discount Rogers. Both these guys are basically sort of 1% or maybe even 3 guys, depending on who's sort of tracking them. So very, very low percentage, very short play. But I think Westbrook for me out of the 2 is the ones I would own. As for Sanders and Green, I think they're the sort of guys I would be spending anywhere between 3 and 5%. I wouldn't be spending much more than that. I think they have a role. I mean, if you kind of quite stacked on your roster or you're very depleted on your roster, maybe spend a little bit more, but definitely don't be spending upwards of like 8% because I just think it's too much for what they'll do, but they do have a vital role. Hunter Renfrow is another option if you're missing out on players, 11.3% owned. He did lead all wideouts for Vegas with 5 receptions. You'll see the TD on Sunday. So it could be, I don't think there's a strong alpha, but it looks like Hunter Renfrow is that sneaky under the radar guy who will put up top 40, top 45 numbers as well. He could be a cheaper option. I think you can get him for less than 5% of your fab. Zach Pascal is someone that really is interesting me right now. 22% owned. And I put out a tweet earlier on, and as a result, I think what I do like about him is he's getting a lot of red zone looks. So only Keenan Allen has had more red zone looks than Zach Pascal. And that it says to me that especially inside the 5, inside the 10, he is getting a lot of work. He's getting 55% of the looks for the team inside the 10. So massive, massive usage. I mean, he only got 2 for 31 on Sunday, but he did get the 7 targets. He's getting the volume. Zach Pascal, for me, needs to be more owned, and he's someone I really like in leagues this week. Tight ends, 2 sort of tight end touchdown or bust options this week. First one's Dawson Knox, 4.4% owned, and he has Houston this week. Again, I keep talking about it. It is what it is. He's safe. He's predictable. He's going to have weeks where he doesn't do a lot, and he has weeks where you have, like he did on Sunday, where he'll go for a touchdown and multiple catches. He is a touchdown or bust play, and that is what he is. But I look at players that are less than 30% owned, and there isn't anyone I want more than Dawson Knox, just because of the fact I think with the Bills' high-power offense, likely to use him, likely to get the ball to him and get red zone looks. Although the other one that does tempt me is Tyler Conklin, 2.6% owned. He has Cleveland in week 4, and he got a real breakout game. And I think a lot of people will get overexcited after his week 3 performance against the Seahawks, but it was the Seahawks. Seahawks have always been notoriously bad at giving up touchdowns and points to tight ends. I do think he is worth an ad, but I wouldn't be spending too much fab. I wouldn't be wasting waiver priority on him. I'd say Knox is probably worth like 2%, 3% of fab. Conklin, maybe even less than that. I just think they're guys on your roster. You should have a starter that should be better than both of these guys. If you don't, then, I think you can pick them up pretty cheap. Kicker on Chase McLaughlin, 15.4% owned. He has been associated in week 4, and as a result, I think it's another shootout. He got 16 fantasy points on Sunday. So someone who doesn't miss that often. They're a relatively high-scoring offense. He's going to have plenty of opportunities. I think the game script is set up for him as a streamer this week. I don't think he's sort of that elite season-long, so I wouldn't be spending any fab on him, maybe $1 max to make sure I had him in the lineup this week if I was relying on a different kicker or if I've been streaming kickers all week. But I wouldn't be spending that much on a kicker anyway. But Chase McLaughlin looks like the pick of the kickers for me this week. And then the DST, my favorite pick here, and there's actually two. In the column I wrote Cincinnati Bengals. They're 5.3% owned. They have Jacksonville. And the reason why is I'm kind of picking on Trevor Lawrence the way the NFL is picking on Trevor Lawrence. 7 INTs and 2 fumbles in 3 games. It was an average of 3 turnover opportunities a week. And as a result of that, the Bengals could be a top 12 defense. And I say that because they were this week against the Steelers and dismantling Ben Roethlisberger. I expect Lawrence at some point to come good, but it's been a pretty rough start for him. And the other one I would be posting and go for if you don't get the Bengals, or if you fancy a different place, the Titans, 8.1%, and they've got the Jets. And the only quarterback that has been statistically worse than Trevor Lawrence in the turnover column is Zach Wilson. So I think both those teams. I think the reason I've sort of given a nod to the Bengals is just because of what they did against a reasonable. I mean, they haven't shown a lot this season, the Steelers, but I think that kind of made me sit up and take notice in that particular game. And I think that they will get picks against Lawrence, just the way that they're throwing the ball and the way that they're, I don't want to say careless, but they kind of just, they're not bothered about the outcome at the moment, Jacksonville. That's really clear. So it's about a process and just going for it and seeing what they've got. And I think the Bengals will take advantage of that. And I think the Titans will too. So I think either or is a good option this week. Colts, D's another one, 43%. They have Miami and they have Jacoby Brissett. I think they'll play a lot of containment. I think there's opportunities for them to get sacks a lot and potentially turnovers. So I think any of those 3 options is really good. That will do it for this week. Please do check out the flagship show that will be on shortly. An amazing guest on this week. Really excited to have him. So just going to take a little break here. And I'm just going to get ready to welcome him. So stay tuned and don't forget, until next week's Waiver Wire, or in a little over 15 minutes time, depending on when my guest joins, don't forget,